Hey, welcome. What can I get for you?
How many kids do you have? I've got
Good semester.
And I got a call from
Mostly A's. Oh, that's so good to
the
hear.
population of London, Ontario is
Oh, I'm
about
sorry, I wanted to
383,800.
We started about 6 months ago. Like you've lost a lot.
Hey, I love what you did.
Yeah, catch up.
Everything doesn't have to be about you. You don't need to just do this, do that. There's that so let me
Boom. Awesome. Well, hey, welcome to Inside Out. I'm so excited you guys are here with us tonight as we're jumping into this brand new series called Voices. My name is Jeremy Edelen. I'm on staff here at North Point, but more importantly, I get to hang out here with you guys every single Sunday night at Inside Out as the junior guys small group leader, hanging out with these guys right here. So I'm pumped for that. But I'm really excited about this series we're jumping into called Voices. And to kick us off, I want to see how well y'all are able to recognize voice. There's voices all around us all the time. I want to see if you guys can recognize voices very well. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to play an audio clip over the sound system, and you have to yell out if you recognize the voice that you hear. Does that make sense? All right. So let's go ahead and play the first clip. Yeah, somebody down here had it bad. All right, that was good. All right, we got some more. Okay, here's the next one right here.
Where are they?
Batman, yeah, Miles got it right there. Yes, Batman, Dark Knight, where are they? That whole thing. All right, the next one. Hey, apparently that's on Netflix now, in case anybody was wondering. This guy just said it, so. The next one is this one right here. Y'all gotta listen up.
Ever since I was a little boy, people have enjoyed the
Morgan
sound of
Freeman.
my voice.
Boom,
and
we got
I
right
figured
here.
you either get busy talking or you get busy dying.
There we go. That's Morgan Freeman, the voice of God. You know, the voice of God right there. Another one. Let's hear another one.
Stop. You're going to take someone's
Granger.
eye. Besides, you
This is
said
the best. This is the best.
wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Any other Harry Potter nerds in here? Yes, thank you. For some reason, Harry Potter makes me feel old now, which is so sad. But that's Hermione. All right, we got two more. The next one I feel like y'all are gonna get pretty quick. Here's the next one.
You used to call me on my...
Yeah, you guys got that one pretty quick, right? You guys got that pretty quick. There we go. I'm going for his beard right now. I got a long ways to go, but I'm going for it. All right, last one. Chewbacca, yes. Some people are excited about that one. Chewbacca, yes. Man, y'all are good at recognizing these voices. But hey, again, I'm really excited to be here tonight as we're jumping into this series called Voices. You know, we're going to be asking the question, how do we recognize voices in our life? And the voices we're going to be talking about, these voices are not like voices that we have in our head or like schizophrenic voices, not that kind of thing. More of voices that each and every person in here has in their life and in their mind. It's kind of our subconscious. It's our consciousness thing that we carry around with us. It's our internal dialogue, the influences that we constantly have going on and on and on. It's the voices that we have in our life. A few examples of this. I don't know if anybody this week is as excited about Apple stuff as I am, but they announced the new iPhone, or iPhones. There's 3 new iPhones. Is anybody in here huge Apple fan, always wants the newest iPhone? Yeah, so that's me. See, he just asked a great question, and this is why it was super underwhelming for me, is because it wasn't very clear what was what's the new iPhone and what makes it cool, what makes it great. it says better camera. It's a bigger screen, basically. Y'all keep listening with me. Y'all keep hanging with me. And that's kind of what they talked about. And for me, again, I'm one of those people that I love all Apple products. And so I was going through this, and I was super like, I don't understand why it's that great. It's not that great. And then this voice inside of me started to well up, and it started to go, Jeremy, you have to have the new iPhone. You have to have it. And this voice inside of me, that's kind of one of these voices that we have. Another voice that many of us have is the voice of Chick-fil-A. Yeah, the voice of Chick-fil-A. I'm a huge Chick-fil-A fan. In fact, I walk in, I'm one of those guys, it's really embarrassing, but I walk into Chick-fil-A and they're like, hey, Jeremy, what's going on? And it's just because I've been there so much and it's like embarrassing every single time. But I'm into this whole health thing for some reason, trying to stay healthy. And so I'll go in with the intention of getting the grilled nuggets. And then I start to smell the fried nuggets. I see the fried nuggets. I see pictures like this. And this voice inside of me is like, Jeremy, you got to have the fried nuggets. Anybody with me on that? Anybody relate with me? A couple. You guys are all grilled nuggets. Okay, that's fine. But that's another one of the voices I experience. The third one is a voice from my past. And I don't know if you guys have voices from your past, but I have voices from my past. And one of them is the voice of my grandma. And you see, my grandma used to tell me things when I was little. And what she used to tell me is one of those things that maybe you can relate. Somebody comes up to you and they say something, you're like, no, my grandma said this. Like, this is what my grandma said, and so it's true. And what my grandma told me is that if I hold my farts in, my heart's going to explode. If I hold my farts in, my heart's going to explode. Like, I will die on the spot if I hold those in. And so I've carried this voice around with me everywhere I go for my entire life. And I have struggled, and I cannot hold it in. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die when that happens. And it's created some tension in my life, specifically in my marriage, if you can imagine how that might play itself out. We'll be on like a date night one day, and she'll just look at me, and she knows. And she'll just look at me, and she'll just be like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm like, babe, I can't hold, I don't know what you expect of me. Like, my heart's going to explode. I'm going to die right here. That's what's going to happen. This is legit. And then another really embarrassing example of how this played itself out is I was taking an AP test back in high school. And I've shared this with our small group, I think. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. But I was taking an AP test, and it was U.S. history, big room, probably a couple hundred people. We're all taking it together. And I feel something coming on, if you guys know what I mean. And I'm like, no, like I'm going to die. I'm not going to do that right now. Like, I can't do that. And then I feel a sneeze coming on. And then I have this like loud, solid sneeze fart that happens in the middle of an AP test. And it was the most embarrassing thing. People are laughing at me all around me. All like the proctors are like, shh, like you can't like, but people are just dying. And I am so embarrassed in that moment. But I'm still alive today, so I feel pretty fine about it. I haven't died yet. My heart hasn't exploded. I feel fine. Yeah, but we all have voices in our life, maybe yours, maybe you can't relate with that one at all. That's totally understandable. But we all have voices in our life. You know, we wake up on a day, we wake up and we get dressed and we look in the mirror. We look at our shoes, we look at our clothes, we're like, man, you're looking good today. We get positive, and then we get in the car. Our parents take us to school maybe. Maybe they say something to us that rubs us the wrong way and we don't like it and so it's discouraging. And we take that with us into school. And then we walk into school, and somebody looks at us in a weird way. We don't even know who the person is, but they look at us, and then all of a sudden, the shoes we're wearing and the clothes we have on, we're like, man, what was I thinking? I don't even know what I'm doing right now. And then we go to class, we go to lunch, we check Snapchat. Nobody Snapchatted us, so like we feel alone. We feel like nobody cares. And then we go to class, and then we have to present in class. In the middle of our presentation, we have to fart, and like we can't hold that in, so like that just happens, right? And we get all embarrassed in the middle of our presentation. And then we keep going on with our day, and we go to practice. And in practice, we begin to question like, hey, should I really be doing this? Am I really good at this? Why do I even try? Kind of thing. That's what happens in practice. And then we go home, and we do homework. And then we go hang out with our friends. And, you know, we already felt that sense of loneliness, so we really want to fit in, so we'll do something that maybe we didn't want to do. And then we go home at night. And I think we've all had this moment. I think most of us in here have had this moment where we're sitting there at night, and we're laying down, and we're looking up at our ceiling, and we begin to feel bad about what happened that day. We begin to feel ashamed for what we did. We begin to question ourselves. We begin to say, hey, do I want to quit? And then we look up at the ceiling and we feel bad about feeling bad about feeling bad, and we become this paradox of feeling bad, and then we're just in our head and we're hearing all these voices. And then we go to bed and we wake up the next day and we do it all over again. I think we all have voices in us, these influences, these things in our subconscious that drive us and make us make certain decisions. And some of these voices are positive. Some of these voices are positive voices. Go ahead and go to the next slide, positive voices. You know, these voices sound like, hey, you can do it. This is encouraging. Hey, go ahead and try hard because you're going to make it in life. You're going to do well in life. You got to love people well. Those are the positive voices. And then we hear some of the negative voices too. And these are the voices that say, you're not enough. Why do you even try? Until you get here, wherever here is for you, with friends or academics or sports, until you get here, you don't have what it takes. You hear the negative voices too. What's crazy when you think about our day is that we each have 60,000 thoughts per day, research would say. It is constantly bombarding us with voices in our head, and these voices are constantly influencing us. They're influencing our thoughts, our actions, what we say, what we do, and that's why we're doing this series. That's why we're jumping into this series called Voices, because when it comes to the voices we hear in life, the voice you believe will determine the future you experience. The voice you believe, the voices you choose to listen to, the influences, the internal dialogue you choose to allow to dictate your life, determines the future that you experience, the outcome of your life. This is why you can have two different people and go through some unspeakable pain or hardship in life, and when they go through this, they have all this hurt and these insecurities and these voices that pop up as a result of it. And when this happens, you see one person take all of these things and they just numb the pain and they just do what feels good and they just go down a path that they ultimately don't want to go down. And then you have the same exact scenario, and you have another person who takes all these thoughts and these feelings and they choose to feel something different, and they choose to believe something different, and they go down a better path for their life, and they tell a better story. Why? Because the voices we believe determines the future we experience in life. This is why ordinary people can choose to believe something about themselves, and they can go on to do extraordinary things. This is why extraordinary people get taken out by thoughts and insecurities and fears, and they do ordinary things. Our voices determine the future we experience. And that's what we're going to talk about throughout this series. And today is really just part one. Think of it as like a long conversation, and we're just doing the first 20% of this conversation throughout this series. But it's so important because if we can choose to listen to the right voices, it can impact our life. And jumping in to part one, what I want to do is I want to give you a tool, a framework, a grid, and how you can think about the voices you hear in life. And when you think about all the voices that you have, it really gets dwindled down to just 5 voices that we experience in life. So we all have these voices. And when you dwindle it down, there's just 5, and they're broken up into 2 different categories. In fact, you have 3 voices that I would say are kind of the not true voices or the deceptive voices. And then you have 2 voices that are the true voices, the things in life that we experience that are true about us. And almost every thought, I would go as far to argue, almost every thought and feeling and emotion and action we have can be determined by these voices we experience. And the first voice is this. It's the voice of the world. The voice of the world. Now, not everything in the world is negative, but it's the deceptive voice of the world. And it basically says this. It says, base your worth and your value and your success on the stuff that you have and on the achievement that you make in life. It says, hey, do whatever makes you happy. It says, hey, buy this, go there, do that. You need to get this thing. You need to wear this thing. You need to participate in this. You better be good at this, because if you're not going to fit in, and you're ultimately not going to have meaning and purpose. It's the voice of the world. It's based on stuff. You know, when you become an adult, it doesn't go away, it just kind of changes. The voice of the world becomes all about money. Hey, get a bigger house, bigger car, better vacation. I don't know if y'all have seen that voice play out in your parents' lives. But that's the voice of the world that says your meaning, your purpose, your value is all based on the stuff you have and how successful you are. It's the voice of the world. The second voice that we have is the voice. It's kind of a weird word, but the voice of the flesh. The voice of the flesh. And this voice essentially says, do whatever makes you feel good. As long as nobody gets hurt, life is all about feeling good. So go there, do that, smoke that, drink this. To you guys in the room, it says, hey, women, their value is based on their body, not on their brain or their heart. That's what the voice of the flesh says, to look at women as. The voice of the flesh also says, hey, don't do it if you have to try hard. It's kind of this passivity thing, this I'm tired thing inside of us. We all want to be productive. We want to have an impact. We want to impact other people's lives. But if it takes effort, it's just not worth it. So it's the voice of the flesh that says, I'm tired. I'm not even going to try. And the voice of the flesh is all about doing what feels best in each moment. And then the third one, and probably the heaviest voice that we each have in our lives, is the voice of the enemy. The voice of the enemy. And this voice is pretty dang loud for each of us. And it looks a little different for each person in this room. But this voice is basically a liar and an accuser. And this voice says constantly, loudly, you are not enough. Why do you even try? You don't matter. You don't have value. You don't have purpose. You're ugly. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're not good enough. You're never going to be successful. You're never going to measure up. Why do you even try? It's the voice of the enemy. It says, hey, you know that thing that you did that one time? Well, God sees that, and he's never going to love you, and he's never going to forgive you because of that thing. It's the voice of the enemy. Ultimately, it says, you have no value. You have no meaning. You have no purpose. And if you're in here and you would say, hey, I'm not a Christian, I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, I'm glad you're here. For you, it kind of stops there. But if you're in here and you would say, yeah, hey, Jeremy, I'm a Christian, that whole Jesus thing, I'm with you, I put my faith and my trust there. If that's you, it kind of goes a step further. Because God is kind of the epitome of evil, and there's kind of this opposing force that Jesus talked, or he's the epitome of good. I'm sorry. You guys know what I was saying. God is the epitome of good, and then there's this opposing force that's the epitome of evil, and Jesus gives it a name, and he says his name is Satan. And it's not a very popular thing to talk about because it kind of freaks us out. It makes us uncomfortable. It makes us scared. But Jesus was clear that that's a real thing, and if you're a Christian in the room, it's a voice that we have to wrestle with. But again, if you're not a Christian, you can just leave that part out. But these are the three deceptive voices that we all have in us, we all have in our minds. And they're constantly trying to discourage us and weigh us down and ultimately keep us from experiencing the future that God has designed for each person in this room. But luckily, there are two more voices. And these voices are much more important and much more true than any other voice we can listen to. And the first one is this. It's the voice of your soul. The voice of your soul. The soul is kind of that weird, vague thing that's hard to understand and talk about. When it comes to the voice of your soul, it's that thing inside each and every one of us that we might see pain or hardship, like the hurricane going on the East Coast, and I think we would all collectively say, that is not okay. That is not okay. Why? Because people matter and people have value. The voice of your soul looks at a movie scene or a story and says, man, that is emotional, that is impactful. Why? Because people matter and people have value. The voice of your soul encourages you to love others around you. The voice of your soul is the voice of belonging. I know for me in my small group, going through my life in boot camp for us, it was just awesome, and we had such good discussion. And there were moments where I just thought, man, there's so much like brotherhood and camaraderie that's happening right now. And I think the voice of our souls was saying, hey, I belong here. The voice of your soul says, I belong here. I matter. I belong with this group of people. Not only that, but when you're doing something you love and you enjoy, the voice of your soul says, I was designed to do this. I was made for this. God designed me for this. It's an amazing voice to listen to, and it's one of those voices that for me, I've had a hard time understanding, but as I get older, I begin to understand pieces and pieces of it a little bit more. And then the last voice is probably the most important one you can listen to. And it's the voice of God. And this voice says 3 words that end up being louder than any other voice you can possibly imagine. And these 3 words are, I love you. God looks at you, he looks at me, every single person in this room, and he says, I love you. You are my child. You are my masterpiece. I created you. I designed you. I love the way you are. I love all the things that you don't like about yourself. I love you unconditionally. It doesn't matter what you do, where you go, what you're thinking about doing, what you're going to do. It doesn't matter. My love for you is unconditional. You are my child. You are my son. You are my daughter. I love you, and my love for you is where your identity is based upon. That's what the voice of God says. And my hope throughout this series is that each of you would begin to turn down the volume of these 3 voices right here, the deceptive voices, the voices that aren't telling you the truth, and you'd begin to turn up the volume of these 2. Because I think that if you can begin to turn up the volume of the voice of your soul and the voice of God in your life, you can begin to live a different life, the life that God designed for you. Why? Because going back to what we said earlier, the voice you believe, going to the next slide, will determine the future you experience. The voice you believe will determine the future you experience. So if you begin to turn up the volume of these 2 voices, man, it's going to impact the future that you have and the life that you begin to live as a result of the way God designed you. And that is my hope, my prayer for each of you in here. And as we wrap up, I just want to share one thing that I've learned with our small group recently. A couple of us guys have been going through the book of Proverbs, which is in the Old Testament. And the book of Proverbs is basically a collection of life principles written by a guy named Solomon. He was really wise and wealthy. And he has these 2 lines that really stick out to me. They're 2 life principles. And here's what he says. He says this when it comes to our voices that we have in life. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters. In other words, our mind, our thoughts, our actions, our heart, the purposes of our heart are like deep waters. When we begin to look inside of ourselves and our mind, we begin to see our insecurities, our fears, all the good, the bad, the ugly. It's like deep waters. It's like looking down into an ocean and it's hard to see everything. It's murky, it's dangerous, it's treacherous, it's hard to tell what's what. But he goes on to say, but one who has insight draws them out. A person with understanding, a wise person, a person who can hear the correct, true voices in their life, looks into the deep waters of their heart and is able to recognize the true voices and draw those out and not listen to the voices that are not true in their life. And the reason they're able to do that is because they ask a simple question that I'm going to leave us here with tonight, and that is this: whose voice is that? Whose voice is that? People who get this are able to look into their good, their bad, their ugly when they're experiencing something, when they're going through something, when they're feeling these thoughts, these emotions, these insecurities, these fears, and they're able to say, whose voice is that? And that's really the beginning of learning to listen to the voice of your soul and the voice of God in your life. And throughout the rest of the series, what we're going to do is Klein Thompson is going to be up here next week for part 2. And she's going to be, I called you out, I'm sorry, I didn't even tell you I was going to do that. But she's going to be talking about a step further. Once we can recognize whose voice is that, what do we do? How do we listen to a voice that's louder than that? How do we listen to the true voices in our life? But when you guys go to small groups tonight, what you're going to do is you're going to get a card. And on this card, it's going to have the 5 voices in life. And what I want you to do with this card is put it somewhere where you're not going to forget about it. If it's on your mirror, if it's in your car, in your wallet, wherever it might be. And the next time you're feeling all of those things, insecurities, fears, and they're weighing you down, they're bringing you down, I just challenge each of you to look at those voices and to ask the question, whose voice is that? We're going to unpack this more in small groups. Let me pray for our time. Heavenly Father, we just are so thankful that your voice speaks louder than any other. God, that you say you love us, and that defines us. And I just pray for each person in this room, whatever they're going through in life, whatever deceptive voices are louder and they can't seem to drown them out, would you just speak louder than that? And would you remind us that you love us unconditionally, that we are valuable, that we matter, that we are your children? We're so thankful for that. Help us to ask the question, whose voice is that? To take steps in a direction of living the life that you want us to live. God, I pray all this in your name. Amen.